the world held its breath. Before dawn on June 6, 1944, a tense silence stretched across the English Channel. Thousands of young men checked their rifles, wrote letters home and braced for what was to come. Boys from Ohio, London, Saskatchewan, and Sydney, most had never seen France or a war like this. On the French coast, German soldiers waited in bunkers scanning the horizon, dreading the invasion they'd trained for but couldn't imagine. In Normandy's villages, French civilians slept uneasily, hoping for liberation but fearing the cost. The distant rumble of planes was both terror and hope. Their homes and fields were about to become a battlefield. This was more than a battle, it was a collision of worlds, the result of years of planning and sacrifice. General Eisenhower had made his decision, the Great Crusade was on. The fate of millions, the future of Europe, rested on the shoulders of ordinary people. From commanders to privates, farmers to machine gunners, each had a role in the drama about to unfold. The longest day had begun. The world would never be the same again. The sun was rising on a day that would change history. Across the channel, hope and dread mingled in every heart. The dice had been cast. The invasion was underway. The world watched, breathless. Private Hal Baumgarten, a kid from New York, was crammed into a landing craft bound for Omaha Beach. The boat rocked violently. The roar of engines and distant guns filled the air. Men were sick, scared, and tried to joke to keep fear at bay. Hal looked at the faces around him, young, tense, clutching their gear. He thought of home and what waited when the ramp dropped. The ramp slammed down. Chaos erupted. German machine guns opened up. Men fell before they left the boat. The water turned red. Hal plunged in, his gear dragging him down. He fought to stay afloat, to move forward. The beach was a nightmare. Smoke and explosions, wounded everywhere. There was no cover, no plan, just survival. Hal crawled to the shingle alive. Many were not. He saw medics risking everything, comrades falling, the scale of violence unimaginable. This was no longer about tactics, just courage and the will to keep moving. For hours, Omaha Beach hung in the balance. Slowly, men like Hal began to crawl forward using rifles and grenades, breaching German defenses in small groups. They fought for the man next to them, because going forward was the only way out. Hal was wounded 5 times that day but survived. His story is Omaha's story: terror, resilience, and stubborn refusal to give up. The fate of the beach turned on moments of individual bravery. The cost was staggering, but the line held. Inch by inch, the Allies gained ground. The ramp was just the beginning. Survival meant moving forward, no matter what. Omaha was won by those who refused to stop. The beach was secured, but at a terrible price. The longest morning was far from over. Franz Gockel, a 20-year-old German machine gunner, waited in his concrete bunker above Omaha Beach. For months it had been routine, watching the sea, cleaning weapons, waiting for the invasion. On June 6th, the horizon vanished behind a wall of Allied ships and planes. The bombardment shook the earth. The world became noise and dust. Through the bunker slit, Franz saw landing craft approach. He gripped his MG-42, waited for the order, and opened fire. Men fell in the water, boats exploded, the fighting was relentless, the Americans kept coming. Franz fired until the barrel glowed, swapped it out, and kept shooting. Inside the bunker, the noise was overwhelming. He fought for survival, not politics, just the next moment, the next target. But the tide turned. Allied destroyers moved close, firing directly at the bunkers. A shell hit Franz's position, wounding him and ending his battle. He was later captured. Years later, Franz wrote of his remorse and the haunting memory of that day. He was a soldier doing his duty, but the view from his concrete shore would never leave him. The defenders faced impossible odds. The Atlantic Wall was breached. The cost was high on both sides. The battle for Omaha was over for Franz, but its echoes lasted a lifetime. Before dawn, the sky over Normandy filled with Allied paratroopers, Americans and British dropping behind enemy lines. Their mission: seize bridges, block reinforcements, and sow chaos. Men like Dick Winters of the 101st Airborne checked their gear in rattling planes flying into darkness and flak. The jump was chaos, planes scattered. Paratroopers dropped miles off target, some drowned in flooded fields, others landed in enemy hands. Winters landed alone, armed only with a trench knife. The plan was shattered, but the confusion worked in the Allies' favor. Germans received reports of paratroopers everywhere, unable to mount a coordinated response. In the dark, small groups of paratroopers found each other using toy crickets as signals. They formed ad hoc units, ready to fight. Winters and a handful of men attacked a German artillery battery at Brecourt Manor, saving countless lives on Utah Beach. It was a small action but a perfect example of airborne courage and initiative. The scattered drops created chaos for the enemy. Each parachute carried a story of survival and bravery. The airborne's actions were critical to D-Day's success. Leadership and improvisation turned disaster into opportunity. The night sky over Normandy was black with parachutes and hope. The battle had begun before the beaches. For years, the French resistance, ordinary people called the Maquis, fought a shadow war. Teachers, farmers, shopkeepers, and priests sabotaged railways, passed intelligence, and risked everything for freedom. In June 1944, coded BBC messages signaled the invasion was near. Across France, the Maquis sprang into action, cutting wires, blowing up tracks, ambushing patrols. Their sabotage delayed German reinforcements and saved Allied lives. In places like Saint-Lô, resistance networks provided vital intelligence on German positions. A farmer's observation or a postman's overheard conversation could change the course of battle. The Maquis operated at immense personal risk. The price was steep. Germans responded with brutal reprisals, massacring civilians in places like Oradour-sur-Glane. To resist was to risk everything, but they did it for the dream of a free France. Their quiet courage was essential to the invasion's success. The Maquis turned whispers of defiance into a roar. Their actions helped turn the tide of war. The resistance's bravery echoed across Normandy. War isn't just about fighting, it's about healing. On D-Day, medics, doctors, and nurses faced unimaginable challenges. Unarmed but marked by red crosses, they crawled through gunfire to reach the wounded. On Omaha Beach, medics made impossible choices. Who could be saved? Who could not? They gave morphine, stopped bleeding, and offered comfort amid chaos. In makeshift aid stations, surgeons worked by flashlight, amputating limbs and fighting infection. The flow of casualties was endless. Exhaustion was constant. Doctors and nurses worked for days without sleep, driven by the need to save one more life. Captain Charles Scheffel set up an aid station in a church, treating Americans, Germans, and civilians alike. For a brief moment, the church became a sanctuary of peace. Even in war's darkest hours, compassion endured. The doctors' war was fought with sutures, not bullets. Their humanity saved countless lives. The Normandy invasion was the greatest gamble in military history. General Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, bore the weight of the decision. He balanced rival commanders, coordinated armies, navies, and air forces, and watched the weather for a narrow window. A storm on June 5th nearly postponed everything. The forecast for June 6th was barely better. Eisenhower listened to his meteorologist and made the call. "Okay, let's go." As the ship sailed, he wrote a note accepting full blame if the invasion failed. Early reports from Omaha were grim. For a moment, it seemed the gamble had failed. Eisenhower paced, waiting for news. Slowly, reports improved. Paratroopers seized objectives, landings at Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword succeeded, and Omaha's defenders were pushed back. The gamble paid off, but Eisenhower took no joy in it. He knew the cost. Thousands of lives lost for a foothold in Europe. The responsibility weighed heavily on him. Victory was bittersweet. The fate of the free world had rested on a single decision. Eisenhower's courage was in accepting the risk and the consequences. The invasion's success changed history. The cost was measured in lives, not just strategy. The general's gamble became the Allies' turning point. D-Day's victory was just the beginning. The fight for Normandy became a brutal, grinding battle in the hedgerows. The bocage, dense, ancient hedgerows turned the countryside into a deadly maze. Every field, every village was paid for in blood. Progress was measured in yards, not miles. Cities like Caen and Cherbourg became scenes of fierce, street-to-street combat. The cost was enormous, over 226,000 Allied casualties, even more German losses, and 20,000 French civilians killed. Homes and farms were destroyed. Liberation came at a terrible price. The price of the Beachhead was paid by soldiers and civilians alike. The struggle for Normandy was a battle of attrition. The victory was hard-won and costly. The road to Paris and to victory was still long. The sacrifice in Normandy secured the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Today, Normandy's beaches are quiet. Tourists walk where soldiers once fought for their lives. The bunkers are silent, the cemeteries filled with rows of white crosses and stars of David. Each marker is a story cut short. The legacy of D-Day is more than military victory. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. It's about courage, sacrifice, and the cost of freedom. We must remember the fear, the chaos, and the grinding fight that defined those days. The men who fought were not superheroes, but ordinary men who answered the call. Their bravery was the triumph over fear. The echoes of Normandy remind us, freedom is fragile, defended by sacrifice. To remember Normandy is to accept responsibility, to honor those who fell and defend the ideals they fought for. The world was shaped by what happened on those beaches. That is the true legacy of the longest day.